Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Jason McKellar.
In the house.
Yeah, how about
the contest coordinator.
That was a nice intro.
That was.
Yeah, it was.
Really good.
So, guys, look, this is the 100th episode.
Do you remember the first episode?
No.
You didn't even know what a podcast was.
I did not know what a podcast was.
That's a lot. It just didn't seem like that long ago.
Time has flown by.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You guys been doing like
kudos
4 or
to
5
you.
a week?
Yeah.
well, not that many, actually. I mean, maybe 1.5 a week.
And kudos to you for making us wrangling us in here each week. You've done it 100 times.
Yeah. I never thought we would. I thought for sure that Toxie and them would come in and go, "Yo, have you guys lost your mind?"
Yeah. Oh, what? Applied what?
Yeah.
And from what I understand, we're number 36 in Ireland?
Good day, mate.
All right, there it is. Is that Irish or is that?
You know, we dropped in France. Go figure.
Yeah.
And we're screaming up the charts in Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's great. Cheers.
Well, those Irish guys that love the dogs.
Yeah, that's right.
The kennels.
The origins of the kennel are actually over there, so that's pretty
I'd
cool.
love one day to go to Ireland and go hunt that traditional way.
Yeah. Meet the OG gamekeepers over there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
So, look, welcome to West Point, Mississippi, everybody, and the home of Mossy Oak, the Gamekeeper Kennels, and
100th episode.
The 100th
Here we
episode.
are.
Yeah, we're in the Gamekeeper studio as
that's
well.
right.
So this is really exciting to be at 100. It was very exciting. We got Marcus Lashley over there.
Yeah.
In
I
the
feel
house.
honored to be number 100.
Yeah.
Well, you just happen to be driving by. You got
Like,
lucky.
hey, do y'all need to record anything? 'Cause
Lured him in with the fried chicken. That's what it was.
So it is hot outside, and right now I can smell chigger.
It's smoking.
It's chigger season.
They've already eaten me up so much they don't want any more of me.
Just tender.
I got into some that were immune to permethrin the other day, and I've probably got 30 or 40 bites on each leg.
It's amazing how bad those things are.
I just got over them.
Yeah.
I was a couple weeks ago walking around. I didn't have permethrin on, but man, I got to eat up.
It's a grind with them, that's for sure.
Do you get out in the state of Florida much and walk some of those properties and it like I imagine you do? 'Cause
Yeah.
Florida is so diverse. You
It
guys
really
have.
It is unbelievable.
I
love that about it.
Yeah, I do too.
So just this week, and I hope we're going to have these guys on. I've got it kind of teed up. The guys that killed that or caught that 217-pound
snake?
Yeah, the Burmese python.
Yeah. Woo.
And then y'all got bears and panthers and great wild turkeys. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of good fishing.
Oh,
a
man.
lot of good fishing.
Lobster and
Phosphate pits, great
scallops.
big bass.
All the stuff you'd pull out of a wetland, we got it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and I like to talk about the deer too, because we have basically the most diverse deer herd and
that's true. I never thought about that for the key deer all the way up.
Yeah. We've got. Aside from the subspecies, just the whitetail breeding days. They're breeding in 10 out of 12 months somewhere in the state, and it's just amazing to me.
Always a rut in Florida.
I saw several bucks well over 130 take, like just on Facebook. That hurricane came through a few years ago and created a bunch of new cover on a lot of public ground down there. And you wouldn't believe the big deer people are killing down there.
I'm always surprised about it, and even in there's some places in the state that are pretty consistent, where they're producing some good deer, that people would be proud of anywhere. And then some places, like you're talking even down in the central part of the state, that are pulling out some deer that I'm astonished constantly by it. It really is amazing.
So even though Florida has this huge population, there are still a lot of large private landowners that are managing and doing things correctly in some places.
Oh, yeah. Down there's some really big landowners down in the central part of the state. If you kind of think down the Okeechobee area. and a lot of them are, they're working lands, so there's some sort of cattle operation generally, but there's some other agriculture as well. And then you kind of move up into the panhandle, and you have those quail plantations, and things start popping up, and people are really intensively managing for quail over there. And it really is. I get to walk around on a bunch of land that's being managed in different ways and do a lot of research on it, and it really is fun. You don't realize, most people that haven't lived in Florida don't realize how diverse it is from a nature standpoint. You think about going to the beach or something, but the whole spine of the state, and there's a big effort to put together a corridor that connects the southern part of the state all the way to Georgia and all the way to Alabama, and it's mostly intact, which is pretty incredible.
That is
have natural
like a
land.
wildlife corridor?
Yeah, it's a wildlife corridor, yeah, the Florida Corridor Project. Yeah. And it's basically the whole spine of connected land. There's some roads bisecting it, but undeveloped land, that whole thing. And
this is really far-fetched, but I'd love to see that done in the Mississippi Delta, like from the woods on the levee, maybe cut through Dahomey Refuge and then continue across.
Yeah, if you look at it on an aerial, you just see little patches of woods, interspersed, and most of the time it's somewhere that's too wet to plant or something, but it's much more of a, like an island system almost of the non-agriculture. But in Florida, that corridor is pretty intact. It's amazingly so, based on what my perception of Florida was before I moved there.
I've read a book recently, last couple of years, and the name of it is just right on the tip of my tongue. But it was about the Florida panther, and it was about the importance of that corridor and how there had been several panthers that had walked the entire corridor. So, and I think that may have been one of the main reasons for the effort to keep that thing intact.
Yeah. Well, it definitely has been a big part of that push, because species like that need such a huge landscape of connected land. And it's actually pretty interesting, even globally. A lot of the huge scale corridor projects like that are spearheaded by conservation for a big cat species like that.
So at some point,
love a big cat.
Yeah, we do, and we love to talk about them. And at some point, you've got to run across and meet the right person that we could have as a guest on the podcast to talk about the Florida Panthers and the effort that's gone into trying to preserve them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a pretty amazing story, and I'm definitely not the right person to talk in detail about it. But I know some of those people that have worked on it for a long time. Some of them have worked on it since the beginning, when there was reintroductions and all that stuff. It's pretty amazing.
It really is.
Effort.
Yeah, because the book I read talked about how they went and got some cats out of West Texas and brought them in there to add to the bloodline.
Yeah. Yep, just trying to deal with that inbreeding depression.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story, and one of the indicators were the tips of their tails.
Yeah, it curls up.
Yeah.
Didn't the hair on their back stand up more or something? I think that was another
There was
indicator.
a series of traits that kind of make you squint, like, what? But yeah, there are several traits like that were indicating that there was problem genetically in the population.
Cool stuff.
I love what you guys do. The
No doubt
biologists, and what y'all study, how they all study the things we love, and it's just fascinating.
Well, and every time they come in, it's like, I'm looking at the pictures of the wildlife, the Florida Wildlife Corridor right now, and just adds a different perspective to what we do every day. I was telling you, Bobby. I mean, even for me, I've had the pleasure of being in the woods a lot, but it's changing the way I'm looking at the landscape. From stem to stern.
Well, I think that. It's kind of an interesting topic to just put into perspective. That corridor was driven by that species, but what else is benefiting from that? Turkeys. Mm-hmm. I'm working with a group right now. We're trying to get a project funded to look at the motivations of landowners to join into the corridor, and that was if we got funded, my role in it would be looking at how important turkeys are to the landowners and the fact that you've connected all the populations through that area. And people won't think about that. We had that one species that kind of spearheaded that effort. But man, there's a lot of stuff that's going to benefit from it.
Not just cats.
Mm-hmm.
How about that? Well, so today, but before we get started, we've got Jason McKellar's over here, and this being the 100th episode.
Which one is it? 100?
The 100.
This is 100, and so for the last 4 episodes, maybe 5 episodes, we have given away some prizes. So guys had a chance to win a $250 gift card for the Gamekeepers Fieldwear at gamekeepersfieldwear.com. That was a great prize. That was the first one. Then we gave away some are going to give away some Leopold sunglasses.
Which are awesome.
They're fantastic. Russell boots. Can you imagine? I mean, those are the great boots.
I've wanted some of those.
Have you got a pair of them, Marcus?
I don't.
We'll get you hooked up.
Many of them, Marcus.
I need some.
Yeah.
Look at the boots I'm wearing.
They're fantastic. So, and then the Gunner Kennel. If you've got a dog, you got to have a Gunner Kennel.
You got to have a Gunner Kennel.
It's
hey, and I think they just came out with some in Greenleaf too. So
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They sure did.
Nice.
And then the grand prize is the Browning A5. And Toxie's not here, so we can say it's coming out of his safe. I don't know why what he keeps thinking, but it is a brand new one. It's unfired.
Yeah.
But what a beautiful gun.
Oh, no doubt
in
about it.
bottom land.
I love mine.
Yeah.
So it's a celebration. 100
It really,
episodes.
the 100th episode. So, Jason, guys listening to this, how did they find out if they won? What are you doing?
Yeah, so when this episode airs, it'll be July 5th. At that point, you can go on the website. We'll have all the winners picked. We have, of course, the 100th episode web page you can go to, or just MossyOakGamekeepers.com/podcast giveaway. We'll announce them all. And of course, we'll put it on social media, and we'll also send an email to the winners. So be sure to check your inbox if your name's on there, so you can figure out how to claim your prize.
Nice.
Yeah, and we'll have to validate those guys. Make
So
sure
if somebody doesn't claim their prize, can we keep it?
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to look at the contest rules.
You have to look at the fine print.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the 101 episode, if we get to do
Are we
one,
going to keep on doing that?
I hope so. We'll, if we get to do
I
100,
thought we were done after
that.
so we'll be able to mention everybody's names.
That's right.
That won.
That's right.
So, and this is a good point for me to point out. We do this little trivia thing at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Some of our listeners have been posting great reviews, but then they are trying to sneak something by us. One guy did. He snuck it by me, this Douche Lips guy.
Oh, gosh. You
But
said it
our
again.
listeners are coming up with some crazy
Do you
names.
know Douche?
I don't know. I don't know who that is. But so I just look, guys. If I have to look at the Urban Dictionary to figure out what your little name is, probably not going to read.
Probably
the
not
name.
going to make the trivia column. That's right.
So,
You've enjoyed that Urban Dictionary, haven't you?
well, now that I know that it exists, 'cause I didn't know what some of
There's
that
actually
stuff
an app
was.
for that.
Yeah.
isn't
Oh, you can Urban. Oh, we need to get that.
Marcus, you got to see what some of these names are.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No, anyway, guys. So if you wouldn't say it in front of your mama, don't put it out there on our review for us. So, Jason, is there anything else we need to say about the winner? This is real exciting. I hope somebody well deserving wins the prize.
Oh, yeah. I think we've had a lot of sign-ups, too.
Congratulations to the winners, and thanks for participating.
That's right.
Yeah, well, good deal. Okay, one last thing I want to mention. We always do a commercial. And Laney, I'm so excited to tell the world about this. But
too.
We had for a couple of years a product called BCP.
BCP!
Yeah, beans, corn, and protein. It was in a 40-pound bag. It's the most attractive protein deer feed
Yeah, it was
I've ever
developed
seen.
for overall herd health. So we put a lot of time and energy developing this thing. I mean, it's got everything, it really needs. We wanted to create a better product is what it comes down to. That's better for overall herd health. So
You wouldn't
really
believe
pumped this coming back.
You wouldn't believe the phone calls we got. It started getting difficult to find in
Yeah.
certain stores, and people were like, "I'll buy a whole pallet."
Yeah, they want it.
Yeah.
And but we finally got it figured out. And it's
Bobby's
back.
been working his booty off, getting it ready. So
It's going to be now. Guys can go now. It's in Tractor Supply
right now.
Yep. And
I'm leaving here and going to get some.
there are Tractor Supplies everywhere, but it's in that white bag with purple writing. It's called Biologic BCP. It's a 40-pound bag of roasted soybeans, corn, and a really good protein pellet.
Pretty good. Yep. Super attractive, super nutritious. So
Yep.
get out there and get it.
That's right. Okay. All right. So looking across the table, Marcus, we hadn't put you to sleep yet. You're sitting there. You got a smile.
I don't know if it was you or the chicken. But.
Yeah. And Marcus is one of our favorite guests. We've enjoyed having him. He hails from a part of the world
very
around
special part of the
Livingston,
world,
Alabama.
no doubt about it. Special to all of us.
We love to turkey hunt.
Home of the dummy line.
Home of the dummy line.
Yeah. Good book.
The first time we met was when you were teaching here at Mississippi State, and did a tour of the nursery, and then we went out to the prairie, the 16th section prairie, and identified a bunch of prairie plants for some students. It was fun.
Yeah, I was teaching wildlife plants. That's what the class was called.
I need to take that.
Speaking of chiggers.
Oh yeah.
Did you get some?
Oh, I got covered up. Yeah.
So Marcus, let's think about it. Right now it's almost July. If you're a gamekeeper, wherever you are, Minnesota to Florida, what can you be doing this month to help get ready for hunting season?
Well, one thing you need to do is stay out of the heat because it's hot right now, especially in Florida. I don't know if it's been hot around here, guys.
Oh, yeah.
But
been kind of steepy.
We've been hitting 100.
There's a bunch of things out there like chiggers that want to bite you, or plants that want to stick you or whatever. But one of the things that I think is important that is really good to do right now is to get out with the objective to learn. You've got a whole suite of plants out there right now that are flowering or they're going to seed, and it makes it obvious what they are, and you can see them. And some of those folks have seen online where we'll be posting seeds that we're finding in turkeys or whatever, and they're wondering what it is. Well, a lot of that stuff is easy to identify right now. And, that's one thing that you can do and not get too hot while you're doing it. You can ride around on ATV or in the truck or something and really get a good handle of what's going on with the plants on your property. Particularly, think about turkeys. They're in a situation right now where they need a suite of forbs like we've talked about. Well, a lot of those forbs are pretty hard to identify when they're not flowering. So right now, a whole bunch of them are, and it's much easier. Plus, it's just nice to look at them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you can do. Deer, the same way. The does are lactating right now. That's really stressful trying to raise fawns. You can see what kinds of things are available for them to eat during the summer. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's great. We're always talking about stuff, active treatments you can be doing.
Yeah.
And one of the things we need to be doing that a lot of folks may be missing out on, especially the more hardcore folks, is to just sit back and observe.
Yeah.
Make mental
Learn
notes,
something.
write them down, ride around. Gosh, this is too grassy, this is too weedy, or, I want to let this grow, or I think I'm going to set that back next year. Or,
and right now, a lot of the things that you want to see or that you're trying to encourage on your property are really showing out right now.
Yeah.
So you can see them. And, that's an important thing. And when, sometimes we need to just take a step back and think in that vein that this is an opportunity to go out and learn. You may not want to crank the chainsaw right now. It's hot, right? That there are some things that you can do with the chainsaw that are good, and the timing is good, but it's hot. So, there's nothing wrong with changing your mindset to this is an opportunity for me to go out and learn. Maybe there are some problems that you need to address. There's some of them that are really easy to identify right now that are very difficult to identify when you would address them. For instance, we were talking about earlier, if you have something invading your food plot like Italian ryegrass or, a weed that you don't want in it, well, maybe you've planted a fall food plot with some grasses and clovers and stuff mixed together. And if you try to see whether or not you have those problems in the fall when you would spray it, it's not as obvious.
All right.
But right now, all the Italian ryegrass, that cool season, it flowered and went to seed in the spring, and it's still standing there dead and just as obvious as it can be.
Yep, saw
right
some
now.
the other day, checking a clover plot.
Yeah, and so now oh man, that thing's really gotten covered up with ryegrass, and I didn't even plant that. Then you can put that on the list. Okay, this is something that I need to address this fall, and maybe that's your opportunity to plant something that you can easily take care of the problem. So, with that one, for instance, it's a grass. You might not want to plant, a mix in your plot that has grass in it, so that you can just spray a grass selective herbicide and take care of your issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's overlooked a lot. We always want actions, like you were saying, Dudley.
No, you're right.
And so these ryegrasses, they're just in the seed bank from years ago when somebody may have planted that plot, unknowingly planted it in ryegrass, thinking they were doing something good.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it was knowingly, and sometimes it might have been by accident. Sometimes it's colonizing. It seems to be really good at spreading.
Man, it does.
And if it goes to seed, man, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You really got to.
It's the one thing I say we have in every plot we have.
Yeah, it's always a problem in this part of the world. I go and look in food plots really commonly where people have planted stuff that does not include ryegrass, and they got it.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it'll be plots that have just been cleared. They never planted it before. It might have been a logging deck or something, and they still have it. So it's, colonize it. It seems to be really good, and it's really good at sticking around if you don't take care of it, spraying it before it goes to seed.
At the right time of year. And that would be when the seed is doughy. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what y'all taught me last week? Okay.
Hey, you learned something.
I
know y'all probably went into that in detail.
All right, I
your guest
finally got
one.
If you were going to crimp it to kill it, that's when you do it.
So
is that you still got that on your notes right there?
No, I don't know how I remember that.
So now would be a good time, wouldn't it be to work on your roads? So if it's hot and dry, it'd be the best time you could get in.
Yeah, if you're doing some road grading for sure.
Yeah.
And work on your tractor, get ready. Because it's not long before we start bush hogging. A couple of weeks. And what's the typical July 15th? Is that right?
It just depends on where you are in the country.
75 days. I counted it this morning. We'll be shooting doves.
75 days from now.
Yeah.
Man, you better get to work on our dove field, Bobby.
I know it.
There's a lot of plants that are right in that 60-day window right there.
Yeah, we need some weather.
Yeah, we need some rain.
Right now, it's so dry.
I was just talking to folks last night how dry it was.
Man, and it
makes it tough.
It is. And I hate to say it's not even that humid, but it's pretty crazy out there.
Yeah. So identifying those plants, and that's a lot. You guys talk about it. Last week we had Dr. Craig Harper. He's got a book that has a bunch of photo IDs. It's one of the better ones I've seen. It being able to show you what that plant looks like and help identify.
No doubt. And in terms of general field management, I mean that is the book, and it has a section in the back. I don't know if y'all noticed, I was on one of the pages in there because I was one of his graduate students back in the days and helped collect some of that data. But that book is really great, and I commonly am introduced to landowners, and they already know a lot of the stuff because they've been reading that book, and they're teed up ready to be just an exceptional gamekeeper because of that.
That's one of the most
gamekeeper buddies have gotten me one. Thanks, Bobby.
That's one of the most impressive tools I've come across in the last few years. I was blown away flipping through it.
So I had to order one.
Do you use? I'll work on that later. So, do you use any apps to help you identify plants?
I have a couple of them, but and there are some that are really good, but I generally don't because I teach wildlife plant ID all the time.
Right.
And I mean, there's plenty that I don't know what it is, but I have a pretty good handle usually on most of the things I'm seeing.
Well, look, I'm not going back to college, and I'm certainly not going to the University of Florida anytime soon. Y'all are a long ways away. Yeah. But so, is there an app that you'd recommend?
Let's see.
Is it called? There's one called Picture This. Have you tried it?
Well, that was the one I was trying to think of something. Picture This. I think. But one thing that I keep up to date on the apps is because the students that are taking some of these classes want to use those apps.
Instead of keying them out.
Yeah.
Can't take shortcuts.
But that app, and then I think it was, is it iNaturalist that a lot of folks
and then just Google.
Yeah.
What is it? Google Photo or something?
Yeah, I think that's what Bronson was using.
Yeah, Bronson was telling me about that.
So
the more
there's several of them that are really good.
but they're not always going to be correct.
Right.
Especially with some of the bigger genuses and lesser known things. It's like an algorithm. So the more photos that get taken and positively identified, the
More robust
the better
it
it
gets.
works.
Right.
So
When I did the thing just, I don't know, it was probably a week or two ago on social media, because people keep sending me pictures of stuff, asking me what it is, which is fine. I like to see people out there trying to figure out stuff. So I'm good to take all those questions, but I was getting so many with all these flowers right now because they're the forbs that they're all trying to get out on the landscape. And I was out in the woods, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to find every one I can find and identify it and put it online. And I don't know, I probably got up to about 50.
Wow.
50
Just walking
general.
around.
Yeah, and I was in I was in quail country where it was a really good place to get a whole suite of forbs. But it's probably 50 genera that, and also I added a whole bunch to it because in my own yard, I've been kind of slowly converting it into something that you don't need to mow.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to do that is to convert it into flowers, because my wife likes the flowers, so that's what I've been doing with it. But we got a whole bunch of good stuff in the yard now, and I just started taking pictures of them and putting them online, just telling people what they are so you can figure it out. But there are all kinds of great resources out there for sure. So, and it's getting easier and easier where you can just have an app and take a picture of it, and some of them are really accurate.
I know
Especially
that's
on a
a
flower.
doubly out.
yeah, it's my yard is a piece of work. 20 years ago, I think the city would have, made me move or something.
Yeah.
But,
Condemned your yard.
yeah. I think people are more accepting of that now.
Well, have you had any of your neighbors get into your yard and start mowing it?
No, not yet.
See, that's when you really step
That's
up
when
your
you hit it.
game.
Yeah.
When your neighbors are getting upset enough that they're
Right.
trying to mow it for you.
They're
I don't
already
think
upset
I've
at him.
owned a mower in 6 years. So,
Good for you.
yay for me.
Yeah.
Yay for you, for sure. Mine's about half and half.
But the
So,
grandparents all think my kids are going to get bit by a snake, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That'd be awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
that would be awful.
They would probably rain down all
You'd probably
kinda-
be cutting your grass.
Oh, man. But I'm going to ask a question about partridge pea.
Okay.
It'll go along those lines.
Are you wanting to get into the ecology of it? Because that's a really interesting species.
Well,
Yeah, do it.
I'm seeing it that tall flowering,
Yeah.
and then I see it on the side of the road that tall flowering. And, is this plant just not getting enough sunlight, enough nutrients or whatever? But it's flowering and trying to produce a seed. But
Well, you're actually probably saying actually more than two things. There's a few things that could be going on. One, there's multiple species of it, and they're different sizes.
Yeah, there's that selection called lark that gets huge.
Yeah, and
A
that
lot
was,
of people,
the
a lot
other
of
thing
biologists
is-
and stuff say that one's too
Yeah.
big.
Well, and there's another one where we've bred the plants, and you'll see that when we're trying to plant it
yeah,
to in places, and that's exactly right. It just gets so big, and it can be on a really productive dirt. I mean, it can be too much for what you're trying to accomplish with it, because it gets so big and it's so aggressive, and you'll see it just kind of start moving real fast into other places, and I've heard folks, they're not real high on some of those cultivars because of that. But the other thing could be, that partridge pea is a legume, and with that association with rhizobia, it basically gets nitrogen from that bacteria that's fixing it, and that allows it to colonize some places that are pretty poor. And you may be seeing it in dirt that's just really poor.
right.
And
Right.
it's just stressed, but it's able to deal with it because it has adaptations to deal with that really poor area. Especially right now, it hadn't been raining. It's really droughty. That makes it even worse in those areas. So
So it's almost like it just decides to use its remaining energy on
Yeah.
making a seed instead of trying to get bigger.
yeah,
And then the one 10 feet away that's in a slightly better spot was able to get a lot bigger before.
maybe it had a little extra moisture, or maybe it was one of the other species or the cultivars or something. You know, there's maybe a suite of those things happening at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the effects of drought on annual forbs is when it starts stressing them to a level that they just go on and flower and try to produce seeds before they die.
You know, like the millets we plant on duck holes, they seem to do that. You know, you can plant them early and they'll get taller and have a seed head, and then if we've been gradually planting them later and later every year, trying to avoid armyworms, and
sure have.
They'll still make a seed head on a plant that's 10 inches tall.
Yeah, during the right time. Sure will.
Well, we're not far from armyworm time at all. I hadn't thought
Don't
about
say
that.
it again.
So Marcus, we talk about things that a gamekeeper could be doing right now, and it seems like the overall consensus answer that you got, the biologist community that y'all come back to us with, was learn your trees, learn your plants, learn your property, those kind of things. So, and you were talking about indicator species. Can you kind of give us some advice on what a guy can look for and learn from?
Yeah, no, that's a really important thing, and I don't think people appreciate it enough. How's it going?
We got Toxie just walked in the room there.
Yeah,
Limped
he's
into
stopping
the
me
room.
right here. So, a lot of people don't appreciate, just take it upon yourself to learn a little bit about what's going on your property. And not just where the deer are laying down or whatever, that stuff's important too, but what are they eating? Be able to identify some of those plants. And it's a daunting task. A
lot of stuff growing out there.
You might have 100 acres and it may have 1,000 species on it. I mean, you're not going to learn all that.
Right.
That's not, that's not necessary either to do that, to be a good gamekeeper. But there are a suite of really common plants that are good indicators that you're doing some stuff right.
Such as?
Like common ragweed, pokeweed, some of the milkweeds like butterfly milkweed. Let's see, the partridge pea like we were just talking about. If you're seeing a lot of those, it's particularly annual forbs, then you're doing some stuff right. You're creating some early successional plant communities that are so valuable for turkeys, especially for brood rearing, but also deer foraging. Those things are peaking in nutritional value right when they need it. So, you don't have to learn all of them, but there are a suite of plants like that you could learn maybe 5 or 10, and that goes a long way for you to evaluate how well are you doing.
And we were talking about this earlier, but folks don't really have an excuse anymore. If you don't want to learn from a book or, I don't know, watching a YouTube video or something.
I probably don't want to go take a course with me on it.
Now,
college,
now there's apps that, can get you probably within 95% certainty. And on those species that were mentioned, probably 100%.
Yeah, they're near 100% if you're getting a good picture in there. And there are several apps like that are really good. And, I think that's something that's important that people just don't do enough. Just take the opportunity to get out on your property and learn. And it's fun, man. I love trying to learn. Now I'm getting to the point where it's just a couple of plants here and there, because I've been doing it a long time. But, you don't have to get to that level. Just there's a lot of value in seeing a bed of flowers and knowing what they all are.
There's more satisfaction to showing up at your farm and doing stuff when you actually see your results.
I have personally watched landowners just light up where they have something like that where they've been seeing this purple flower and it's all over the place and they want to know what it is, and then I tell them what it is, and it may not even be one that's really that good for deer, turkey, or quail. But, it could be like bee balm or something. It's just a really pretty flower, and they've been seeing it and want to know what it is. And then you could go into, well, look at all these pollinators that are associated with it, and check out this bee. It's a really rare one. and then they just light up, and then next thing you know, that we're over there eating lunch, and they're telling their neighboring landowners, "Hey, I got bee balm all over my property," and it doesn't even. It's not necessarily even directly influencing what their primary interest is, but it's just
the wonder of
it's
nature.
fun.
Yeah,
And as being a gamekeeper, part of that is just trying to promote nature.
And it's a learning process. I mean, being a gamekeeper is never knowing enough about it to us, Because I want to know everything that's out there. I'm never going to be able to, but
right. Just wanting to. Yeah. That's important.
We were talking about this at lunch too, and it's so true. It's like the more knowledge you get, the more things you notice in a negative way.
The more you know, the more you don't know.
Yeah,
right. And
that's exactly right.
Well, that's one thing. It's sort of addicting, and you kind of go down this rabbit hole, for lack of a better way to put it. You end up trying to learn stuff about things you never even knew existed just prior to it. So you kind of get on that where you go deeper and deeper. I certainly have done that plenty.
No doubt.
You also start noticing, man, that ain't right.
No, they shouldn't be doing that.
Well, and it would help you like notice something like if Kogan grass all of a sudden popped up.
Oh my goodness!
Well, that
everywhere.
was the other thing I was going to say. There's some indicators that are really valuable plants, but there's a handful of things that are really big problems, and when you see it pop up, you better go on and take care of it, or it's going to become a bigger problem.
I saw that in my yard. I found a patch of Japanese stilt grass in my yard, and I would have just, 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, that's kind of pretty," and it's there, But now it's like, I got to get rid of that.
Yeah, Japanese stilt grass, Sericea lespedeza is another one that can become a real big problem. I forgot the climbing fern, Japanese climbing fern. Yeah. There's a suite of plants like that you need to go ahead and take care of them if they pop up.
Lots of them.
Wow. So look, let's change gears a little bit. You were telling us about this thing called Oak Masting. Can you explain that to us and how Dudley got involved and what you guys learned from this?
Yeah, it was a really cool study, and I guess part of it is a lot of people don't see how we make some of this research happen like this. Like this project was something that we were really interested in, and there's just not the traditional avenues to get grant funding for it. But landowners really care about it, and I care about it because I'm a hunter and I want to impact people's land. And it's hard to get funding for some of those kinds of things, and this was one of those ideas. But I guess to back up, that oak masting, that's just a fancy term for saying that they all drop their seeds together. So that's what masting. It just means that the plants all drop their seeds together, and it's a strategy of the plants. And there are a whole bunch of things. The one we always think about is oaks, but there are a whole bunch of plants all over the planet that do that, where they just synchronize mass production. And mast, that would be a hard mast with oak, and you could have soft mast, which would be, your blackberry or something like that. So what we were interested in several things. The thing that was really motivating us is, we sit in a tree stand, and we found that white oak, and sometimes you have a stand sitting there and you just go back to it over and over because the same individual just rains it down year after year, and the deer love it. And we were trying to figure out, well, how much does it actually influence deer behavior? That masting individual, especially in a year where it may be the only oak in the place that's doing it, and how much does it actually influence behavior? And we were trying to figure out how to do that. And I remember sitting down with the student Mariah, and Dudley knows him pretty well now since he came over here a bunch. But we were trying to figure out, okay, how many acorns does a typical oak? We had this study site where we had gone out and mapped a bunch of oaks, and we had figured out how much canopy area they had, and we looked at a bunch of literature that counted how many acorns per canopy they would have on a decent mast year and all this stuff. And then we were like, we're going to calculate how many acorns would a typical oak produce. And it came out to 3,000 acorns for an oak. And we were sitting there and it's like, okay, well, we probably, we were doing some math, just trying to figure out, well, how many oaks would we need to do this on and to get the response and be able to, do the science part of it and have a definitive answer. And we figured out it'd be about 25, and it was like, well, darn, that's
a lot of acorns.
That's 75,000 acorns. And I remember when we got to that point, looking at him, and he was sitting there in my office looking back at me, and I was thinking he was going to be like, was there something else that we can do?
Yeah.
Like, can we redo this math or something? And instead, he's like, all right, that's what we're going to do then. So we were trying to figure out, well, how are we going to pick up 75,000 acorns?
We could help with that.
Yeah, it's like, it turns out we knew some folks that know how to make that happen. And we reached out to Dudley and asked, hey, is there a way that we can, get up with you guys and get some help to collect all these acorns? Maybe we can help y'all collect some or whatever. And Dudley was like, hey, we got these, what do you call them, a pecan picker.
Yeah, or acorn picking up in machines.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, a funny looking thing to begin with. It
works like a champ, though.
It looks really sophisticated, and then when you learn what it is, then it doesn't look really sophisticated at all.
This is true.
So, Dudley let us borrow some of those machines, and then Mariah went around, and the only thing we could find that year that had a considerable amount of mast on it was Shoot-marred oak.
And that's a good, they're all over town.
Yeah, they're just planted all over town, and there were a handful of individuals where, the limbs were bending over. They were just ready, to drop all these acorns. And so we got the equipment, and Mariah went out there to picking acorns up, and he literally picked up a truckload of them. It was so funny. I got a picture of it where he
probably got way more than 75,000 too.
Well, I asked him, I was like, how do you know you had 75,000? Did you actually count all of them? He said, no, I counted.
Like 100 of them.
A gallon or something.
Well, he had a 3-gallon bucket, I think, is what he was doing. And he would fill the 3-gallon bucket up to the brim, and then he would pour that out and count how many were in it. And then he'd do that, he did that a whole bunch of times, and he figured out that give or take about 4 or 5 acorns or something, he could predict how many were in that bucket.
Yeah.
And then he collected that many buckets worth. I don't remember the details about that, but it's pretty funny to, see. You guys probably appreciate it more than anybody.
No doubt about it.
What it's like to look at a truck bed full of acorns.
So what all did y'all learn?
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible project. So basically what we did, we had these paired trees, and we call them parent trees, ones that are producing acorns. And we went out there and we did a couple of things. One, we just did a full survey all around the tree to see what native plants were all in the community around it. And then we actually bought some seedlings from native nurseries and an oak species that you had a bunch of at the time, and I don't remember which one it was, but it was a red oak species. And then I think it was black gum, which tends to be higher preference for deer. And we went out and planted a pair of them under each tree, and then he went out and just simulated what it'd be like if the tree was masting. So he literally figured out, okay, they produced about this many percentage per week, through their masting, and he tried to center it right when they would be doing it. And it was a poor mast year, so there weren't many in the woods to speak of, but he just was out there slinging them out, the number. And we had a camera on it monitoring deer use, and we were thinking we're going to figure out how many more bow shots we get if we sat on a tree that had a whole bunch of acorns versus one that didn't, and that was kind of motivating us.
There's always an agenda, even with the top flight.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is we know that deer are important, and the way this is, everything's going down, and the oak tree is really important, and that interaction is important, and nobody thinks about any of that stuff. And we can do this really cool, fun experiment. We're going to learn a lot about hunting and do that ecology at the same time, and then we can publish it in an ecology journal or whatever, and get the science out. But of course, we don't put that part of it in the social media post or whatever. We're telling how many people how many more bow shots you're going to get on the tree. So it really changed my perception in a lot of ways of oak masting, and I think Dudley would probably appreciate some of the things that we gleaned from it. But we put those acorns out primarily in November when the shoe marge would have been dropping, and we did see a bump in deer use. And granted, there aren't any white oaks. It was a mass failure that year, so we were thinking we're going to put these things out and the deer are going to be on them. And we put out 3,000 under the tree. They're going to be on it for a few weeks and suck all them things up, and they're going to be gone. And we put them out, and we were getting a few pictures of deer under it, and we might have doubled that. And then it kind of sat there, about double what we would expect. And of course, we had another tree right beside it where we knew that they weren't using it, right down, and a whole bunch of these replicated across the landscape, and we kind of consistently stayed about double. Then we got in about mid-January, which was post-rut. It was in North Mississippi. We got about mid-January, and it just spikes, goes through the roof in deer use. And I was like, wow. Okay, so basically we've just put out all these acorns, and there's not many on the landscape, and they just let them sit there all the way till from November till January, and then they had this huge spike in use, and then that was sustained all the way into the spring, like well into the spring. I think it was a total of 5 or 6 months that we had higher deer use on the mast tree than we did on the the one where we didn't put any acorns under it. So that was pretty impressive. But I learned some things about that that I think are important from a hunting standpoint. We would have, if you were just hunting and you saw this shoe-marred oak just raining down acorns in the woods, you wouldn't have seen that much deer use during November. And we would have interpreted that as they don't like that species. But what really was happening is they had a time when they liked that species. They're doing their thing and eating, and then it came time where that became really important, and they switched to it. And, the acorns sat there for a good while. We were getting a little use on them, but then it just went through the roof. It's a huge spike in use. And
interesting.
That got me think of several things. One, we talk about diversity, and I hear Dudley talk about, diversifying the trees that you're using. And I've done it even with trees from your nursery on my own land, where I have things that mast at different times. Yep. And that's a good way to do that, by having things that, maybe they produce early in the year and things that produce late in the year and all in between. But it also takes it up another level, where you could also be diversifying the resource availability by planting things that they like at different times of the year. They may all be dropping them. I mean, a lot of the oaks are dropping in November, at least part of their crop, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily when they're going to be using it. And with our white oak species, that they germinate pretty much as soon as they fall off the tree. That's much more ephemeral. It's not going to stick around as a seed very long. That's valuable. So we see wildlife really jump on those and hammer them right away when they're falling. But the red oak isn't going to germinate till spring. They can potentially afford to wait a little bit longer till that's really important. So you may be diversifying it by changing species where where they're masting during the year, but also think about when the animals really need the mast on it. And I just thought that was such a neat thing to learn from that, because it just caught us completely off guard. We would have never thought. And it was consistent across the whole study, 25 replications. That happened across the board.
After hearing about all that, I really started hunting, these upland sites that had like scarlet oak and black oak, which I normally didn't even think about.
Yeah. Well, and when they're dropping acorns, there's not really that much going on with them. But, when I've been a part of several studies where we were looking at what deer were eating, and one of the studies in North Carolina, we were looking at what they were eating like in the March, and they were just wearing out turkey oak. And it's like, man, those things dropped months ago.
Yeah.
And they had sat around and then, got around to late February, March, and all of a sudden that became a hot resource and they started using them heavily.
You think that's just because of the availability? Earlier in the year, there's just more mast crop out there and it's more preferred because maybe it's got a better taste or higher.
Well, I think some of it probably is that, but, in our study here in North Mississippi, there wasn't anything available.
Right. That was
but there were some other things available that
no
were not
more
mast, though.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So,
with turkeys, would they just? They're not that way, are they? If they wander under a tree that's dropping acorns, they're going to scratch them up.
It might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the turkey use would probably not on that species, but on a lot of species, they're probably a little less keyed in on the timing, I would guess.
That's a pretty big acorn.
Yeah.
Also sounds like y'all didn't have any hogs on that property.
No, there's no hogs there. Now, that's another thing that's really important, though. They wouldn't be able to wait on it if there's hogs there.
Yeah, that's right.
They probably would go ahead and take them.
Yeah, they might get after them. I mean,
I wonder if the
tannins.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
do they blanch? I know they do on. We've seen it time and time again. If they're in water and rain, but if they're not, if they're just dry,
I think they
do
taste
they
better
still
when they get older.
Kind of.
That may be something to study later on, or I don't know if y'all did anything with that, but they supposedly, according to lore, they leach.
Yeah.
But those tannins are what helps make that seed stay viable.
Yeah.
And edible further on.
We collected a bunch of samples, and for one reason or another, we weren't able to get them tested. But that was one of the things that we looked for, with other publications to see. Could it have just been that it took them a while before they got right in terms of
and
leaching out the tannins?
There's also more chemical changes that take place, and I think that like the carbs turn into starches or vice versa. It's something like that slowly over time.
One of the things, and maybe what you're alluding to, one of the things that based on our literature review and just talking about this as scientists, a bunch of us sitting around trying to figure out why, it may have been that the seed was getting ready and it started undergoing changes because it's getting ready to germinate.
Yeah.
And you think about white oak, well, it's already going through those changes, and then they key right in on the white oak.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So the seed could have been getting ready to germinate. Maybe that changed some stuff, but we don't have data on the
I'd love to see more continuation on this set of studies.
It turned out being really cool in all kinds of ways. I mean, some of the ways that people could at least know about, maybe not as practical of information for you, but it's still interesting, is that deer eating plants on the landscape are really important for the way that the plant community is responding to things and what you're actually seeing available. I mean, you're not seeing the things that they already ate, right? And they like some species more than others, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So you remember I talked about the other things we did. We came back in and looked at the plant community around these trees where we put mast under some and didn't put mast under others, and looked to see, okay, we sustained elevated deer use on these things for months and months. They probably were nibbling around on the plants more and more, just more browsing in general around the ones that they were hanging out. So we literally had them bedding in some of the areas where they're bedding on a bed of acorns, just sitting around eating the stuff. But we thought that probably matters to the plant community, and I think especially up in the Northeast, deer are kind of viewed as an enemy because they eat a lot of stuff that we're trying to grow, forestry wise or whatever, and then folks that are in agriculture, they're eating your crops or whatever, but we don't appreciate that they're a natural part of the system. And, in this system, that's a natural process that's happening. These oaks, you have some trees that drop a lot and other ones, may not ever drop anything. And what happened is the ones that we had the really high herbivory in, they had a whole suite of plants associated with that tree that were not present in the other one. And then the ones where we didn't put any acorns had a whole suite of plants associated with it that weren't with the other. And when you put them all together, the whole system was more diverse because there was these little hot spots of where deer really browsed heavily, and then other spots where they just didn't do much.
So, like, I'm just assuming maybe the disturbance from them hoofing up all the ground cover, stepping on acorns and pushing them into the ground and making them sprout.
Yeah, we had a series of hypotheses like that, trying to figure out, well, what actually mechanistically is causing us to see some of these plants, and we came up with a few ideas like that the deer are literally just turning over all the leaves, and it wasn't just deer, but deer were they were the wildlife species that really we saw a big increase in. We didn't see that on anything else really. And, they're turning over all the leaves and kicking dirt and disturbing the soil, but they're also eating a lot of the stuff and coming back and repeatedly browsing on things. And combination of those probably was pretty important for why we saw the plant community shift.
Like with the rotational grazing with cows and things, they're also pooping and peeing under that tree, too.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing.
Dropping seeds and
some of the
fertilizing
I have a student right now that is actually looking to see what all seeds are they dispersing, and it's pretty common that you'll have a single pellet that'll have 10 plus seeds of forbs in it in particular.
Good grief!
One pellet of deer scat,
which isn't that big.
Yeah. It's got 10 species.
How do those taste, Dudley?
That's fascinating. I've never tried those.
Malted milk balls.
So what would 3,000 shoe-marred oaks acorns weigh?
I'm thinking
Come on, Dudley.
Dudley's got this
I'm
one.
thinking off the top of my head. I want to say like water oak and cherry bark
Come on,
are
Mr.
like
Know-it-all.
250 a pound. So something like shoe-marred is probably like 50 to 80 a pound.
So where I'm trying to go is from your research, could y'all extrapolate and say that an average hardwood forest, an acre produces X amount of pounds of acorns on an average year?
That number's out there already.
Some of that Harper.
I did. I actually posted that. I calculated how many a typical oak stand per acre would produce in a year. So I have a post where I did that. Yeah. I can't remember the number of acres.
So many variables, though.
Sure. But it was I forgot what the number is.
It's in the tons, though, I would expect.
Yeah, it was a ton, literally tons of food that could be produced by oaks, and that was just if they, the average production, and I think it was a stand stocking of 100 trees per acre or something.
Right.
Like that.
Some of those trees don't produce at all. Some of them produce.
Some of them just.
A lot of the Dr. Craig Harper stuff worked on that as well. And you may have been a part of that.
What kind of canopies do you have to work with to start with? If you've got a crowded forest, it's going to be dramatically different than one with spacing and big canopies.
For sure. But the study, Harper's study, me and one other student were the first two graduate students that helped him start that study, and then he went through 6 or 8 generations of graduate students, and we just published last year or two the publication after 10 years of data collection on it. It was pretty interesting, and it led me to another one. I currently have a long-term oak mast study trying to figure out a different thing about it, and it's pretty interesting as well. This Kelsey Domini is the graduate student, and she just sat down with me recently, and we looked at the data. And we're out there, we've got all these baskets. It's as simple as it sounds. We'll just put it that way. It's just a thing under the trees to catch how many acorns are dropping, and we can estimate how many they do. And one thing that just kind of blew me away about it, I was not expecting, is we had, for instance, water oak. She's got hundreds of water oaks that she's tracking. And we had some that were peaking. I'm talking about the same species at the same site. We have some that are peaking and late September, early October, and some that are peaking in early December.
Yep.
You know, they're months,
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
months apart. And I was just like, I can't believe. I've been thinking about all this as they're all synchronizing and trying to rain it down, and we had 4 or 5 species that she was tracking, and they were all like that. We have individuals that are, they may be months apart. That the water oak's extreme, but even some of the, we had white oak and swamp chestnut oak, for instance, and they're still. There's
that's what's so neat about
it.
That's what we love so much about the oaks is there's so much variation and room for improvement.
I'm convinced. Look, I've watched it for so long. Dudley has lived it for so long now. I'm convinced it's a genetic predisposition. I mean, even within a species, and water oak is a great one. I mean, it's one of my favorite oaks.
No doubt.
But there's some are more closely, but like even around here, the famed Nuttall, the red oak, because they're so late. But you'll find them sometimes really early.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's 2 or 3 months from, say 2 months in the peak of those two.
I think I would venture to say Shumard might be the one that varies the most. Yeah. We've got Shumards that we collect in mid-October. I've got Shumards that hang on to the tree until mid-March.
Yeah, I'll see. When you do that early season, is there anything going on yet in September around here, late September? And you'll find a Shumard starting to occasionally.
But
that's
it's
really cool.
It's fascinating, studies like that, where you and Mariah were putting the acorns under the tree.
Yeah.
It just tells you that there's more of a, they all have so many jobs and everything in that forest is working together. Mm-hmm. And whether you believe in God or not,
it's unbelievable. How can you not?
Come on.
It's kind of like some of those Pollan books, those Michael Pollan books. Everything's working together.
Yeah. It's all
and
connected.
talking.
Yeah.
Well, he's referring to it as a plant community. That expands the understanding.
It's a miracle every time.
And it's not just the plants; it's the the fungal associations.
It speaks to what y'all were talking about when I came in. Is literally that is something. In fact, the more you know, the brightest research minds in the world are the ones in the most wonderment about it because they see more and more and have a broader awareness of everything going. Just like him when he goes in the woods or Dudley. They see so much more than the average person who doesn't understand much. So they wonder even more. It's just amazing.
I just realized
It's just
more and more that
amazing.
I know less and less.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's why
that's what Gamekeepers.
Yeah, that's
about
the bigger
to be, I
picture
promise.
thing about being a gamekeeper. What's so incredible about what we do, to me, if you get to that point, because it goes back to what I talk about, time, and you only have so much time, at least here on Earth, with this, and you get so much more joy and so much more wonderment out of every day in the woods than just, what did he score? Did I kill? Did I not kill? I didn't have a good hunt. I mean, there's just so much more, but you have to understand it to be able to get to that level. Yeah. So what I will say also, listen, every time Craig was here, listen to you many times now, so many smart people, and you just learn so much. But one thing's a common thread every time if you're making decisions about your place, and you're not sure for whatever you're doing, diversity every time.
Every time.
I mean, there's different things to diversify. But if you're not sure, choose diversity every time.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about the oaks.
Yes.
Like it made me realize there was diversity on other levels with the same thing. I've been thinking about diversity. Okay, maybe you could have diversity in age classes, right? So you have things that are producing at different ages, or that's another level of diversity. Or you could have species diversity, or now we could even think about it in terms of diversity of when wildlife respond to it, or having diversity of the genetics of individuals on your place within a species, because they'll diversify what they're doing. It's just like we get on. We start ending up with a diversity of ways to diversify.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like so many. I've always obsessed over cup oak. It's a fascinating species to me, and people are like, well, don't plant something if it's not within a 50-mile radius of, and I'm thinking, well, an overcup oak an acorn could fall out of a tree
in
southern Indiana
the next day,
and be in the Gulf of Mexico.
That's right.
Or land on some, go flood in the Mississippi Delta and land at
one
Concordia Island.
It'll arrive up on an island
700 miles away and sprout and grow.
We obsess over these naturally occurring hybrids. It's just been a hobby for me, and then Dudley, and then the whole group and we're kind of known for them. But I would say we probably discovered more, maybe because we paid attention to running that are crossed with overcup. And if you look at what may be even available from other people, which is pretty rare, it seems like the overcup or maybe the burr further north creates more that people find or whatever. What I was getting to is like everyone I know of, they are amazingly exhibit whatever heterosis, whether they're grow faster or the deer love the acorns or they're more productive. For some reason, it just seems like at the overcup, cross with something creates a better tree than the next one. Now, that's just anecdotal. But you've seen that.
Right.
And maybe it's not that desirable by itself. I mean, I think it's a really cool tree because we're fighting to keep from losing trees in these wetlands. That and Nuttall and maybe a few more are the only things that subsist,
There's so many things about plant interactions that we don't understand.
That's right.
And we're trying to find them out. Like, I think we're getting a little off subject, but like where we grow all of our overcups at the nursery, we've probably grown over 1 million of them since we started. I've never, ever found a hybrid in the overcup acorn beds, where overcup acorns
But you find overcup hybrids in the other white oak beds.
But in all the other white oak beds, I can find where overcup pollen, where I can find overcup hybrids.
That's cool right there.
And so it's just another God thing that, may be over our heads, but it's being done for a reason, for
it's all in the plan.
More genetic diversity. I don't know.
Yeah, and that builds into stability in nature, sharing those genetics, and it's more resilient to things.
So did we ever talk about the seedlings y'all were planting under the trees?
I don't think we did, but what we were trying to demonstrate with that was that exactly the point. It seems kind of obvious, but we wanted to, sew this up experimentally as well as we could. And we picked a species that we didn't think they would browse much and a species that we thought they would, with the red oak species and the black gum. And the idea was that we would see a big difference in their growth rate when they were under the trees that we put all the mast in.
Oh, okay.
Because they would browse the preferred one really heavily and maybe not so much on the other one, whereas where they're not using it much,
it would be able to.
Yeah, they'd basically be really competitive, and that's what we saw, and we were able to basically use that to say, it does seem to be the herbivory level that is driving the changes that we saw more broadly in the plant community. Wow. So that gave us that, some evidence that's probably one of the major important things. But it just, for me, it was a win, and when you go into the literature and you see all this stuff about, things about herbivory being negative, and it's often because people are trying to grow trees for a crop or crops, and you see a lot of research showing how, kind of painting deer as a negative species, and that was a big win for me. It's like, wait a minute now, they're driving diversity across this landscape by chasing mast in this forest, and that's really interesting and important.
What does herbivory mean?
Plant eaters.
Plant eating.
Okay, well, I knew what a herbivore was, but
herbivory is the action, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Herbivore is the noun, and one's the verb.
Okay.
Body.
Well, I just got a little confused.
Got that big 6th grade education. Did
you get heterosis?
Mr. Know-it-all?
Yeah.
Did you get heterosis?
I did not hear that one or get that one.
Heterosis is hybrid vigor. Things grow faster.
That's right.
It's like exhibiting the.
It's like 1 + 1 = 4, Bobby.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Non-additive effects.
And it doesn't always happen, but it actually indicates sometimes it does happen. And what? There's another word for you, a buzzword for trees. What, Dudley? What is it called when heterosis occurs? And it is something that
I'm scared.
Produces fruit early in life. What's that called?
Oh my gosh, I've said that word
Good.
10 million times.
Precocious.
Yeah,
Precocious.
precocity.
I thought it was
Precocious.
promiscuous.
Bobby,
You would.
different. Of course, Bobby's mind goes there.
Always trying to secure that. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, this is really fascinating.
very
It's way over
intriguing.
my head
Yeah.
listening to this stuff, and
It's the wonder of nature, though. I mean,
Well, you know what? It's not.
find
If
it
you go out there and pay attention, it's not over anybody's head.
That's right.
In my mind, just go
Yeah.
out there. And then, it is true. The more, it's like he can, and then Dudley will have more than any of us out there.
But then you hear
but-
the results and you're like, duh.
yeah, I love
You
that.
didn't even think about it before the
No, I
I
results.
love
happened.
those duh moments.
But just,
that's
you're going to be a better hunter if you learn to pay more attention to everything going on out there. So, in a roundabout way, that is exactly what will help you be better, is learning more about everything out there,
Well, I think there's a lot to be said also that, you have the opportunity with the next generation when they're young
Yes.
to get them out there and get them interested and cultivate a lifelong learner
yeah, that wonder of wildlife.
that's just wonders about everything. And there's a lot of value in just having curiosity.
Wonder with a U, right?
That's why Dudley can't, if he goes, we go to the woods and look at something, he's always behind somewhere getting lost because he's looking at everything.
He never
and if
makes
he
it to
finds
the
a
stand.
tree that he likes, he might look up in it and study it for like 10 minutes. We're like, Dudley, we're late. We got to get in here. The turkeys
are
I'm coming.
gobbling
I'm
right
coming.
there,
I'm coming.
You see the size of
I'm
that
the
egg?
same way. There's no telling how many turkeys got away because of that for me.
No, no doubt.
I just think it's a cool.
I'm
That's
gonna come back and
That's a cool thing for us all to look up to is some people that are more in tune and pay attention to everything when they're coming in and out of the woods and, just the world in general, nature
Yeah,
in general.
that's right.
That's just something I think everybody ought to try to aspire to more than we do instead of just results,
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, and there's actually some remarkable studies showing that we have a cascade of chemical things
Yes,
that
absolutely.
happen. It's biophilia.
Yes.
Like it's been demonstrated really well that humans respond to nature in ways
Absolutely.
that make you more healthy.
And live longer.
We're a case
The-
study around here.
The two things that correct me if I'm
You're
wrong,
looking
someone will
good.
probably call us know. Two things going on that they're using literally to extend life, heal people, and well-being is exactly what you said: nature, gardening, touching,
Immersion.
and pets.
Yep.
Those
No
two
doubt
things
about it.
are creating a better life and actually helping even heal people. So it makes me proud of two of the things we're really big into and pushing is that.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Wow. That's
100th
exciting.
episode.
Missing a boat without
Yeah.
it, both of them.
This has been a really deep
Great one.
discussion.
It is.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's perfect
It's
for the
perfect.
100.
It is perfect for the 100. I mean,
So
it
is
really
that hard for shallow people like Bobby?
It can be, yeah. It sure can.
Are you saying we're all shallow? Sorry, had to take a shot there.
Yeah. Well, and Toxic kind of drug in here late. Was there?
Oh my
did
gosh!
something,
Don't even talk about it. So here's the deal.
He was wondering
So
about
I
something.
always said I got a good analogy. An analogy. The three most feared words in the English language as a parent on Christmas Eve. Some assembly required.
Oh yeah.
So the three most feared words when it's 105 and you're a gamekeeper in the middle of the day is busted hydraulic hose.
Oh, yeah.
With a long walk on top of it. So I made it. I'm in better shape than I thought.
Did you walk all the way over here?
I walked, but I walked back to my truck, which is a gas truck, not diesel.
Yeah.
And I busted a line on my bulldozer.
Oh, no.
Yes. But thank goodness,
Did you hit 1-800 dial of clay?
not yet. We'll look at it. It's not an emergency
Okay, cool.
situation right now, I don't think.
Well, we're glad you made it.
yeah, but it's
absolutely.
like not fun, which is, you just got to park the frustration on the sideline. If you're going to do it, you're going
to run into those problems. I
constantly
mean,
be
you just do.
something. Yep.
Exactly.
Well,
There's a lot more days you run into those kind of things that go really smooth.
Yep.
I promise you that.
So I did not look
But
at
you
the plant
appreciate that.
communities
Yeah, you do.
today.
Man, that
I
one
was
day
too
you
busy destroying some of them, repairing an old road that was washed out. But I looked at them on the way out at 105 degrees. It was hot right now.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you made it. We saved
did.
the masting
Oh,
topic for when you
Absolutely.
got here.
Very
so.
intriguing stuff.
Marcus, you got a big smile on your
Yeah.
face. We sure enjoyed talking to you.
Oh,
So.
it's
Appreciate you being here.
Been
Yeah.
great.
No
I
doubt
enjoyed
about
it.
Dudley, do you have an Ask Dudley prepared?
I do, and it's kind of different this week. it didn't come in the form of an email. I had a customer that his name's Will Stevens, and he's actually the guy that sent the mulberry tree photo.
Oh, with the turkeys in it? That was super cool.
I actually said his last name wrong the last time I brought him up in here, but so I'm going to clarify that. But he called me the other day. He had been listening to some Craig Harper stuff and, probably some Marcus stuff, and he was just kind of confusing himself, and it left me a little bit confused. And after I hung up the phone, I think I came up with a better answer for him in my mind, but I was just going to mention it to Marcus. He was saying that, he keeps hearing about all this no-till and improve your soil and, build your soil, but he's also hearing about all this disturbance stuff. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what's the right thing to do? Am I supposed to be disking my place up, or am I supposed to not be tilling it at all? Yeah. And I sat there. I think we talked about it for 15 minutes, and then I didn't really give him a great answer. And then I hung up the phone and went and talked to a coworker, and he was like, "Oh, well, boom." And I was like, "Well, that's right." But I wanted to kind of hear Marcus's approach to that.
Well, I think there's, we go back to what's your objective and what you're trying to achieve, and that's a really important thing, especially with this. And they're particularly with a practice like disking, there's some situations where that might be a good thing to do and a good tool, particularly if you're trying to do some old field management and promote forbs. You wouldn't want to do it in a place where you had native ground cover, with, and I'm talking about probably not native species, but like what originally was the cover there, which is pretty rare on the landscape. But
like a glade or something.
Yeah, where you have a whole bunch of things that are kind of rare plants, and the soil structure is really important and everything, and you keep out of that, and you don't need to be in that with the disc, because you already have your native plants that you're trying to promote. And a lot of times in the South, you're looking at burning it, and that's what you're trying to use as your disturbance. But particularly in plots that you're planting repeatedly over and over for years and years and years, that's where I think a lot of this is coming up with that approach, where we're trying to maintain soil health because we just repeatedly done it for years. And we've seen that in agriculture, where you start to affect some of the soil community negatively by repeatedly disking it up, and you can gain a lot of things in the soil health and just keeping the soil there, avoiding erosion by going to more of a no-till strategy in that. So it really is context dependent, but there's no question, it's particularly if you're trying to reclaim some ag fields that, into a native plant community of forbs and things, that disking can play a pretty important role in that. And you may not be able to get it going in the right way without, some of that disking as part of it. And it's really balancing. If you have that scenario and it's already dominated by forbs, and you can just keep that going, keep it in early succession with just fire, then there's no reason to do the disking. The alternative could be the same way, though. There are some people that they're just not going to use fire, or they're in a situation where they can't, and the disking might be a way that they can disturb the area and keep it in early succession. It's really, it is confusing.
Yeah.
So it depends.
Yeah. Is it fair to say, too, that in using a disc to disturb natural native habitat and improve it doesn't mean you have to destroy it?
Right.
You could just lightly disc, or as the angle of a disc determines a lot. So if you have an angle, it's going to dig deeper and turn more. But if you can adjust your disc, especially on a small tractor, and a 3-point hitch disc, you can adjust those discs with a pin to whether you're running straight ahead.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're really kind of just cutting little furrows and not destroying everything there. That might be enough without having to try to disc it like you were going to plant.
Yeah,
It's just when you said disturbance, it makes so much sense, Because for years we've learned, even here, managing more soil plants for ducks, if you wait till the right time of year to disturb the soil, you'll get different results. And typically wait until after the 4th of July, and the later in the summer you're going to get a lot of good seed grasses, more soil plants that are desirable.
Annuals, yeah.
The later in the summer you disturb the soil. So in a lot of cases, the cheapest thing to do, if it's in the soil bank, because it depends on what soil bank you got, but if it floods all the time, you probably have that. Wait till, I'd say August myself, but, you want some rain coming. And if you can just drain the water and disc your pond and then leave it, you're liable to you might have to have one application of a herbicide, but you're liable to get as much or more food from that as all this trouble planting.
Right.
I'm not taking away from planting because that's an enormous tool.
Yeah.
But my point from pointing back to him is just disturb it. All you did was disturb the soil one time, walk away from it, and let nature take its course.
Well, and you also kind of tied it back into earlier discussion that you need to be paying attention to what happens.
Yes.
And, if you're disking in that moist soil bed and you end up with a bunch of cocklebur, you need to get in there and do something with it. Whereas, if you know what you're looking at and have some indicators of success or the alternative
or non-success.
You're unsuccess, then you may need to.
Toxie's real good at growing this barnyard grass, which I think is
the good Lord grows the barnyard grass, not me. But that's exactly what I was talking about. It's a great, and I'm pretty sure that's actually millet. It's a native millet, and that's what they hybridized to make Jack millet. I think that's right. And so they're actually very similar.
They're all
I think
in the same genus.
Yeah, and so it's the stud muffin of waterfowl forages. That's when they farm for dirty corn. It's so amazing. That's what they're getting, this barnyard grass. And the good thing about the native species, I'll even pimp that a little, is they last through the winter so much better than ag species for waterfowl. They're there all the way through, unless you have a big flood washing it all out. They're there all winter and don't go bad. So
it's like we always say, Lanny, nature is amazing.
Oh,
it is.
So Lanny, what did we learn?
I keep on learning. I go back to what we talked about earlier. Digest. I'm lucky enough to get to sit here every week, and digest all this stuff. It's really changed the way I look at the woods. And I've been there a long time, so just paying attention, listening to what these guys say, and then the main for me is learning how much work I got to do because there's something to do out there all the time.
Yeah.
So super cool.
No doubt.
Never learn enough.
It really is. It's fascinating. These guys they've shown us a whole different way to look at the landscape.
My nature vision has been enhanced.
Well, doesn't it make you want to learn more?
Every day.
Oh my God.
Every time.
Every
it
time.
gets me every time.
You never get it all.
Dudley, have you got a takeaway from today?
No, I was just thinking in the back of my mind that I'm thankful that a lot of these folks like Marcus are hunters.
Yes.
And they are, they're doing the scientific stuff, but it's amazing the difference, in what we're basing it on hunting, but we're also basing it on the big picture. And I think if a lot of our biologists and stuff weren't hunters and fishers, then
we got to evolve as
stuff
hunters.
we need to get studied wouldn't be getting studied.
We
Well,
have to change.
another thing, we have a lot of stuff that needs to be studied, and then they do it, and they can't relate it to anybody that has land to do something with it. So that's something that I felt I've tried to take that role as a scientist, because the majority of landowners, at least in the South, are interested in hunting, and they're the ones that own the land, and they're the ones we need to be doing stuff to make more of all these species we love.
Otherwise, it might just end up getting developed someday.
So being able to, like the deer thing with, most people maybe think it's interesting, but you're not necessarily driving your land management decisions to try to promote diversity with deer, but people will use that are deer hunters because they're the ones that own the land. So if we can relate it to something that they are interested in, that's kind of the strategy I've been trying to take for a long time.
And thanks to scientists like yourself, we, the hunters, are much better at looking at the big picture than we were even 5 years
That's
ago.
exactly
Big
right.
time.
And that's where we have to go to, to keep on doing what we do. So,
Toxie, you got something to add?
Well, just that the bigger picture of the whole hunting thing too is that he will, and others like him that what Dudley just said made me think about this is that we get the privilege of being able to hunt only in the context of what's best for that particular species we're hunting.
that's true.
And what they do, they bring that back to light because they have the whole holistic picture of nature and research and things have been vetted. I mean, they've learned so much, and they've not only done the research, even more than that, I would say he's read so much and paid attention to the whole world of research. And it teaches us that that's the only reason that we're able or afforded this privilege. Because if we didn't do it in the context of hunting, it would be wrong. It would not be good for Mother Earth. But B, selfishly, we won't have anything to hunt, or they'll be hard to hunt, or we'll lose the species. So I think he points out a great lesson of life in all of this as us as hunters to understand that privilege and that we're getting to do it in the context of what's best for the species. So when you boil it down, then, who gets to do that? Each individual piece of land, whether it's a government piece of land or private land. And that's called being a gamekeeper, is taking care of your place in the context of getting to do that privilege. Boom.
Yeah.
Better than you found it.
Marcus, I'm going to give you the last word.
Yeah, part of that's learning, and I didn't even mention it, guys, but we a bunch of times on here have talked a lot about fire, and we did, I guess, a little bit here, probably the least amount on this one, but I did just make available a training that's free to everybody. It's online that folks can go. We have the link on, on social media and everything, where if you want to learn more about how to use fire, it doesn't take the place of the state agency prescribed fire manager training where you get that certification, but it is we put together a bunch of really good scientists who are experts on smoke management and firing techniques and wildlife management. All these people came together and we put together a fairly comprehensive, course where you can go take it on your own time. It's online and free to everybody, and I just wanted to get it out for everybody to use.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can we publish it? Can we share that on our stuff?
Yeah,
I
think we have. I remember seeing it, but we'll double check on that.
Yeah.
So.
But that's so valuable. Yeah, it doesn't
it's
replace.
a time to learn.
Doesn't replace the school, but you think about if it helps one person, if it saves one person, more importantly, read it. Look at it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to dig into it as much as I love to burn, and I've been burning forever, and I think I kind of know it all. I do not.
Well, even
and
me, I study fire
I
all the
welcome
time.
learning everything I can.
I study fire all the time, and I went through the modules that other people created, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about fire. That's what I felt like. I mean, it's a really good resource for everybody, and like we've said several times, it's hot right now. It's a good time to be taking some learning opportunities, and that's one you can do whenever you get ready, and it's free to everybody. So
yeah,
awesome.
Good advice. So, look, this has been we really appreciate you coming up, Marcus. And guys, if they don't follow you, it's at Dr. Disturbance. That's on Instagram, and you're on Facebook. You're just doing some really neat stuff. And we appreciate having you as a guest. And
I still think it started in the brass monkey, but I'm not going to argue with you.
I didn't say it did.
Well, look, this is our 100th episode.
100.
I wanted to be sure we thanked everybody for listening to us.
Yes.
Wow.
Everybody from Osceola appreciates
That's crazy.
you guys listening. And look, I would ask, if everybody knows somebody else that has the same interest. If y'all don't mind if you'd share the podcast, we sure would appreciate it.
Yeah, and
So,
let us know what you'd like to hear about, too.
Always.
We're not doing this to hear ourselves talk. Yeah. We really want to connect with people out there, and so the best way is let us know
That's right.
things that you like or you want to hear more about, or especially a new topic we may have missed.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
They may be tired of hearing about me, guys.
I don't know. I don't think so.
All right, guys. Well,
Maybe at 200.
it's been a lot of fun. Lanny, you're going on vacation next week. Be
Yeah, I'll be
safe and
out.
try to catch some fish.
He's a
if you will.
crustacean at heart.
Yes. Get a little bit of salt water. So.
Yeah, good for you. You deserve a vacation. So.
Well, thank you, Bobby.
Well, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of. Well, where's Mac?
Who knows
Yeah,
where Mac
he's selling
Mac
some
is.
seeds
He's
somewhere.
he's trying to find a turkey
Just
hunting
get us
spot.
out of here, Percy or whoever.
Yeah, get us
Get us
out
out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.